This is Cross Culture Podcast with Belle Tyndall and Lauren Windle,
where we talk pop culture and current affairs from a Christian perspective.
Oh, we are back. Your pop culture pals. It's Windle and Tyndall.
Oh, I just talked over you there, right? My mum listened to the pilot, and first question she asked was, is it going to be on BBC Sounds? No, mum, sadly not yet. Just on the
I
old
love
Spotify.
the hope though.
Yeah, I know. And then her feedback was, sometimes when she listens to Evil Geniuses on BBC Sounds, all of the comedians are so keen to talk that they talk over them each other, and we only did that a few times, but we should really watch out for it.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Windle.
So,
Consider
yeah.
that advice taken.
But she liked it overall. She was really keen.
Great.
So yeah, so that's
I'm
good.
So glad. My gran also commented. She commented on our Instagram saying she liked it. So we've got the mum and the gran's approval.
On is her Instagram handle something to do with being a gran or a granny? Something like that.
Is, Lauren,
yes.
Yeah.
When she commented, I thought, oh my goodness, we're really reaching a really wide demographic age-wise. Yeah. But no, it's just your nan.
It's my gran. Were you like, is this my gran? Belle's gran? Someone's gran? Anyone's gran?
Amazing.
Producer Chris's gran?
We're hitting the grans.
We absolutely are. And she gave a glowing review. So
she did.
Here we are.
She did. That's great.
Oh.
Can I tell you something I did this weekend?
Please do.
I'm really excited to tell you, okay, because this has been in the works for years, right? Pandemic hit. My mates, Emma and Ross, moved in with me because we all lived on our own, and it was like, look, just come and live. So for a couple of months, one of them actually lived in this office, which I'm filming from now because it's got a sofa bed, and then the other was in the spare room. And we just, went for walks on the weekend, worked together, blah, blah, blah. And nice. Ross got obsessed with selling his clothes on eBay in the pandemic as like an eBay activity. Sure. Like, we've got time now, let's get this admin done. He even bought a mannequin to put his clothes on. He talked about it so much that one day after a socially distanced drink in Wetherspoons in Herne Hill, me and Emma decided we were going to buy all his clothes. So we got friends to buy his stuff from his eBay shop as and when the auctions went up. And for his birthday this weekend, we all showed up wearing his clothes.
That is phenomenal. How did it go down?
Oh my, he looked at another friend of mine, Aaron. He goes, hey, is that from ASOS? I actually had that shirt. I sold it in 2020, right? And then they had a bit of banter about that. He was like, oh, no way. And then he turns and looks at my other friend, Harriet, and he's like, hang on, wait. And then he starts looking at everyone, every single person. And he clocks me wearing one of his shirts, and he just absolutely loses it. Oh my goodness. It was the best payoff from a prank that I have had. And I blooming loved it. It was so good.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a long game you've played. You've kept that.
I'm nothing if not committed to a gag. Yeah. I go too far.
The long gag.
Anything. I will play the long game if it gets a good punchline. I think it's worth it. And my goodness, it was worth it. But before we talk about actual stuff, I do need to issue an apology and a correction to the listeners from last week.
Please do. My name is not actually Lauren.
No, the name's legit. The information I passed on that I assumed that the Married at First Sight apartment building would not be in London because it was too expensive, that was fake news. And actually, producer Chris, his wife was watching it, and couple went to a restaurant in it, and they Googled the restaurant, and it was in North London. And then what locked it in for me is when the voiceover guy said, meanwhile back in London, and then they cut to the apartment. But I can legitimately say that other reality TV shows where they book out a whole apartment building, like the Circle, that's filmed in Salford. So I'm not 100% wrong, but I am wrong. And
You're
that's
not.
it.
I like that it's your city. It's your home. it's your stomping ground, Lauren.
North London.
Recognise it.
There is a very definite North and South London divide, and I'm south of the river.
There?
So look,
okay, never mind then.
What can I say? I didn't spot it, and I'm sorry. No. And I need everyone to hear my apology.
Apologies to everyone out there, including your mum, my gran, and anyone else who's listening.
Just the two of them, probably.
Probably. Hiya to the two of them. All right. On to this week, because since we last recorded, something has happened. There has been a battle of the books So,
oh my goodness, yeah.
Last Thursday, the something of October, I can't do quick maths enough to remember what the date was. 2 books were released. 2 books that were hotly tipped to be bestsellers. One was entitled I Haven't Been Entirely Honest With You by Miranda Hart.
Miranda.
The other was entitled Unleashed by a one and only Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Lauren and I took a book each and we have some things to say.
It is
Lauren.
It is a head-to-head with
it's
the
a
fluffy head person, larger than life personalities, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is.
But mine's quite serious. I feel like you should go first with. I did Bojo, and my reflections are like not that lighthearted and funny. So I feel like you should go first.
Start with Miranda. Okay, so basically, I'll just come straight out and say that you pulled the short straw.
Yeah,
you really did. And I thank you for it, and the listeners should thank you for it. Because while you were slogging away, getting into Bojo's head, Miranda Hart's book, I Have Not Been Entirely Honest With You, is a pure delight. So I read it because basically I've been reading a lot of heavy stuff at the moment and I just wanted to gift myself a bit of warmth. And also I'm really in a season of missing my very best friend, Hannah. And for some reason, Miranda always reminds me of Hannah.
Oh, that's
I know.
nice.
So I thought, right, I'm going to treat myself to this book. And what a treat it was. So it's basically...
Is it an autobiography? Are we starting from birth?
We're not starting from birth. It's around the past 10 years. So basically, the title, I Haven't Been Entirely Honest With You, is about 2 things. One is that she's been secretly really struggling with Lyme disease. So she's been chronically ill for 10 years and has kept it very much on the DL. Yeah, so she documents the real depth of darkness, physically, mentally, everything that she was going through while she was Miranda.
Bless her.
While she was literally making the nation laugh. She was deeply suffering and never told anybody. So it's that. She tells the story of that. The other thing that she hasn't been quite honest about was the fact that she is now married.
I actually heard that through the grapevine.
I know. Isn't that what you mean before the book?
Yeah, I had actually, yeah.
Right, again, your London stories, like just the stuff you know, the people you know.
A couple of people I know go to her church. So... yeah, somebody said, oh, someone's at Miranda's wedding. And I was like, hello, now, what now's this? And then, but obviously she was deliberately not very public about it. And she wanted to tell people in her own time. And that she did. And good for her.
That she
Finding
did.
love at 51.
So this book,
bloody hell, there's hope for us all.
Finding love at 51. There absolutely is. And so this book basically tells that story too. She calls him the boy, capital T, capital B. And it's only right at the end that she goes, I haven't been quite honest with you. He's not my boyfriend. He's my husband. And you think, oh, that's so beautiful. But here's the deep stuff. Because as you can imagine, it is full of hard-won wisdom, characteristic warmth, just general loveliness. This is Miranda Hart, like, of course it is. But just leaning to get it, that was really smooth. But also what she's done is she's kind of put these treasures, what she's called treasures that she's found within this time of kind of like suffering and love and loss and all of that, is basically the stuff she's learned. And that's where it gets a bit self-helpy. But here's the thing. And you must have known this because you just mentioned she went to church. I had no idea she was a Christian.
Oh, no I see her as like a batch of quite famous, like famously Christian. You know how Christians always harp on about like Bear Grylls, like anyone who's mainstream famous who's also Christian. I see her as a Bear Grylls. Like people talk about the fact she's Christian all the time. I thought so. But
I had no idea. And so when I read this book, I was expecting it to be lovely. I was not expecting it to be absolutely soaked in Jesus. But it fully, completely is.
Is it? Does she use the word Jesus?
She uses the word God.
Okay.
A lot. So she talks, and each chapter she talks about like a watchword, which is basically like what she's found and is explaining in this chapter. And I started reading them, right, and it was like faithfulness, peace, self-control, kindness, goodness. And I was like,
hang on a minute.
I know these. Her chapters are literally after the fruits of the Spirit. Her treasures that she's found are the fruits of the Spirit.
I love that.
It's so good.
That's what I call ninja gospel, you know, because someone will read that and they'll be like, That's really good. And then hopefully
Yeah.
slowly they'll be like, wait a second, that might be Jesus, not Miranda.
Yeah. It could be. And every now and again, she does mention faith and she does mention God, and she does it in such a natural way. So there's one point where she's talking about like waiting, which as Christians, we always talk about waiting, don't we? We always talk about the fact that when you're doing nothing, it's never nothing. She talks about that, and she talks about having to put her trust in something. And she just said, I chose God. And is so natural about it. And she's like, you might choose whatever you want, like a family, a pet even. I chose God. And I was like,
love that from her.
Love that. From her.
I feel like we are getting to a time where people are increasingly open to hearing messages like that, whether they would assign that message to the God of the Bible, you know, Jesus and stuff. I don't know. I do feel like that we're inching closer to, you know, everyone sort of rejected faith and Christianity and organized religion, and we're circling back. But I feel like people are sort of taking what they want from it and leaving the rest, which isn't necessarily ideal.
No, 100%. It's kind of like, yeah, you're right. We're circling back to spiritual things, Christianity being very much one of them, but we're doing it in quite an individualistic, consumeristic way.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I'll take
in the
I'll
12
take the good bits.
12 steps of recovery, they say take what works and leave the rest, right? But actually when it comes to the Bible, that's not really, it's more like here's the whole thing, you know, like take your time in coming to terms with and understanding and learning about it, but it is kind of like a full package. But
absolutely. It's a pure delight. And so you can try, Lauren. You can try.
My reading experience this week, I think, was a little different. Boris did not base each chapter on a different fruit of the Spirit. You will be blown away to hear. Boris Johnson's book is effectively what you probably would expect, in that he runs through his time in power. Initially, at least, it's not very chronological, but it becomes quite chronological. And he talks about being a mayor of London. That's very London-centric. And then he talks about Brexit and his time in Brussels. And then he goes on to talk about his time as the Prime Minister. So it's just a series of either explanations as to why it was inevitable and not his fault that things went wrong, you know, highlighting where things went well. Now, here's some stuff, right? I'm just going to throw some stuff at you. There were things that went well, right? And maybe I only think that now that I've heard him say it from his slant. Maybe I need to read an anti-Boris book and then meet somewhere in the middle, right?
Okay.
But, you know, things that he did in London when he was mayor, you know, good things were achieved. And it wasn't all the things he stole from Ken Livingstone either, right? There were some...
The bikes.
Well, Ken laid the groundwork for the bikes, I believe.
Oh, okay. Are you telling me that the Boris bikes were not Boris's idea?
No, they weren't Boris's idea. No, they weren't.
That's some good marketing from Boris's
I
team.
know, bless. And then obviously Ken Livingstone was mayor of London when we won the bid to host the Olympics, but then Boris Johnson was, you know, prancing around like the king of the Olympics. So look, he harvested what others had sown, I'd say, in a sort of, but he did achieve some really good things. And he puts forward his perspective in quite a, as you'd expect, like a brusque, abrasive, like, well, so this is what we did, and we protect the heritage, and we do this. And you kind of get it. It's consistent. He is who he is, right? He's never pretended not to be a little bit abrasive. Like anyone who reads his back catalogue of columns in The Telegraph can tell that. I haven't, and I will not be. But, you know, he's never shied away from expressing an opinion, controversial or otherwise. And I'd say that that is consistent. I guess it's a bit boring just to hear someone talk through why every decision they made was right or inevitable, or, you know, other factors or why things didn't work out. I didn't enjoy his defence of stop and search. I'm too liberal for that. And he was a real champion of stop and search in London. And that has caused people I know and people I care about a lot of issues. But obviously completely support the tackling of knife crime and recognise that any of these issues are very, very difficult ones to manage. Okay, so there's a few little snippets. I guess the main thing that it raised for me, because at times I felt sorry for him, because you're kind of between a rock and a hard place with these decisions. And you're like, yeah, I sort of get that. Like, you couldn't pay me to be prime minister. You couldn't pay me to lead a church, let alone be prime minister, right?
Yeah,
The pressure, everyone's opinion, everyone's invested, everyone's got different motives, different experiences, and everyone expects their voice to be heard and taken into account in these decision-making processes. I think it's absolutely wild to want that level of responsibility. But can I feel sorry for him when he was so clearly clambering for the power? If he had been put into that position because he had proven himself to be a good person and blah, 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 and then actually like jury duty, or he got the call up, nothing he could do, then I think I'd have real sympathy for him.
Yeah.
But my question is, who should have power? And my feeling is, and look, this isn't me being, I'm pretty middle of the road when it comes to politics, right? This isn't me being anti-Tory or necessarily anti-Boris, but he shouldn't have had power. And very few people who want power should. If you go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, right, and I hate to keep referencing my sobriety, but I feel like there's some really good lessons in the way that people interact from these kinds of things. If you go and the person who is sort of chairman of that meeting doesn't show up, which happens very rarely because people take their responsibilities pretty seriously, but it happens. The person who goes, I'll do it, is the person who's not allowed to do it. It has to be someone who is nominated by another person in the room. If you want power, you should not have it. That's the rule, right? There's no way to enforce that. You can't go around, collect the people who very genuinely do not want to be in power, assess them for their wisdom and their compassion and their judgment, and then force them to do it. But that, I believe, is how we'd get good leadership.
I agree. This is so interesting because I was chatting to a friend of mine literally on the weekend about this. So he is a leader and is kind of growing in influence, but very much in a church sphere. Okay. And I was chatting to him and his wife, and what they were saying is he was saying basically the thing is I'm such a reluctant leader. And I said, yeah, but the problem with that is that's the only type of leader I want. So I only want reluctant leaders.
And I have no idea who this person is or, anything about them. But my first reaction is cynicism. Like, yeah, of course you are. No, you love it. Because that's what we see from leaders, church and mainstream.
Yes. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're right. Is people who want power for power's sake.
Yeah.
Really. Power is the means to the end. It's the end, it's the means, it's the everything in between. And you're right. Those are the precise people that should not hold any, which is fascinating. And the way recovery groups do that that's
sit
radical.
back down.
Sit back down. That's completely radical and completely the way everything should be run and completely impossible.
I know, that's the thing.
Time.
How does one coordinate a democratic system where power is assigned to those who are most genuinely reluctant? And how do you identify those who want it least? Because they'd never they'd never step forward and be like, yes, that's me. I'm the person who deserves power because they don't want it. They'd be tucking themselves away, in the vicarage with a cup of tea going, let them fight it out,
Yeah. What's the opposite of main character syndrome?
Maybe what you said last week about just having Robin energy.
Are you telling me that I should be Prime Minister then?
I'd vote for you over some of these ones. I mean, run as an independent and see how you get on, love, because I think at the moment we'll take anything.
We absolutely will. That's fascinating. Okay, so give me a rating, a Boris Johnson book rating, and let's see who's won this battle of the books.
Oh, I don't need to. You've won. Like, if you want to hear a man justify a series of bad decisions and highlight good decisions that maybe should have got a bit more press coverage, then it's a 10 out of 10. If you want a good read that is genuinely interesting and it's well written. He's never been a bad writer, but if you're like, hey, what shall I read this weekend? I'd say it's like a 3, and it's going to date really quickly. It will be popular. It will be a bestseller for this month, and then it's going to be like, we've kind of got it. And most people won't even buy the book. They'll just read a few headlines from the newspapers, like the Star ran with the cover like number 10 looked like a crack den after Theresa May or something like that from the book. And basically he's just criticising, because he quite famously redecorated everything and Carrie put her stamp on it and blah, blah, blah. So he's just criticising the way that it was handed over to him. But obviously it's those kinds of lines that pick up the most sort of media attention. So yeah, I wouldn't really bother. Oh, actually, do you know what that's Lorraine Kelly, right? When you publicize a book, it's really hard. Publicity doesn't equal book sales, right? It just equals better publicity for the author. Often. Right. Sometimes it does. There are a few places which buck that trend. And Lorraine Kelly, if you can get yourself on Lorraine Kelly, the people who watch Lorraine Kelly actually buy books. And I was watching it on Thursday morning. She had Sophie Kinsella in, little throwback to your rom-coms. She had David Baddiel, who was talking about his kids' book, who writes about Judaism, actually, from his perspective. He had a adult book recently about that. And then afterwards she said like, oh, and also out today is Boris Johnson, and he was paid 200 million reportedly for his book. You can read it. I shan't be. And that was it. And that was her whole thing. That was the whole thing. And I was like, crikey, Lorraine.
That's
shots
excellent.
Fired. Yeah, so
that's so funny.
Yeah.
You can read it. I shan't be.
I shan't be. And then she just moved on. And that was the whole segment.
Isn't that the most phenomenal bad review?
Yeah. It's like when Justin Bieber said, my mama doesn't like you and she likes everyone.
And she likes everyone.
Cuts
Do you
deep.
know what? I actually used that when I was a child to another child about my mum.
I bet your mum would have been fuming if she'd known.
She marched me over to apologise, because my mum was actually she did all the children and youth in my church.
No.
And it was completely untrue, but you're right, it's the most stinging thing you could say to someone is like, not even my mum likes you, and she likes everyone.
Everyone apart from you. Yeah.
Apart from you. But I'm going to switch that up and I'll be using Lorraine's from now on. I might just comment it on videos, text it to people, TripAdvisor.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely
You
brilliant.
can eat there. I shan't be.
Yeah, exactly. Just while we've touched on tabloids and tabloid papers, obviously my background's in tabloid journalism, and I'm conscious that we didn't do any tabloid chat last week. So I've dug out a little gem for you from the Mirror. It's actually been in all of the tabloids since. King Charles didn't realise what Clingfilm was. And he shrieked the first time he saw it. Yeah, hot off the press this week.
Lauren,
75.
Do an impression of King Charles shrieking. Go on.
Hang on, let me just be posh. Oh! How was that? Was it a bit squeaky rather than shrieky? You shriek like King Charles.
Oh my gosh! Right, ooh, no, that's like a bit like a puppy sound, isn't it? Ooh.
Oh, can you imagine not having seen Clingfilm?
No, what? I don't even know where to start with this. How?
Yeah, I guess if there are leftovers, he's not in charge of packing them away.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you know what? I watched the Emily Maitlis drama about her Prince Andrew interview, that notorious interview that Emily Maitlis, she was working for Newsnight, and she did that notorious Newsnight interview with Prince Andrew. Mm-hmm. Since she has produced a drama about her time, about that experience, it happened in the run-up.
Wait, there's been two of these dramatisations, right?
Yeah.
Because
I've watched them both.
Have you? Okay, the one I watched had the woman from Sex Education and
Gillian Anderson.
Thank you, Gillian Anderson. Yeah, that's the one I watched.
So that one was produced by the booker, the one who booked the interview.
Yeah.
And then this one has been produced by Emily Maitlis, who obviously conducted the interview.
Yeah.
And in it, there's this little scene where the royal aides are speaking. I don't know the right terminology, but let's just call them
advisors or aides.
They're advisors, whatever. And they're talking to this other aide and they're like, you don't understand. These people, when they go on a trip, they've never packed. And when they need to drive somewhere, they've never used maps. And literally just trying to really hone in how bizarre these people's lives are. So you could put in that little scene, they've never used Clingfilm.
They've never packed a doggy bag away, popped it in the fridge.
They've never done it.
Never. Wow.
Does someone need to introduce him to tinfoil?
Well, it would be, maybe. Baking paper, potentially.
Baking paper?
I wonder how many of the different, the sort of kitchen stationery aisle that you get next to the bin bags. I wonder how many shrieks we'd manage to get if we took him down Asda's.
Imagine, he'd be screaming his way around. Imagine. And also, we need to tell him as well that you're supposed to use like the beeswax stuff now, not the plastic cling film. Apparently,
I can't get the beeswax stuff to work as well.
No, nor me.
I want to be a person who no longer
So
uses
do I.
cling film.
I do
want
too.
to. I'm not there yet.
Nor am I. I also want to like paper straws more, but I don't like those either.
I do use paper straws because...
I use them, but begrudgingly.
Do you want to hear this makes me such a loser? My dad hoards things, right? So like his favourite things to hoard include the sticks in a Magnum ice cream, because you never know when Blue Peter will make you make something with lolly sticks. Sometimes he gets the little scallops from Marks and Spencer's as a treat, and then he keeps the shell that they're served in. You know, just stuff like that he washes it all, but then he stacks up and he keeps it.
Okay, fair enough.
I found in their cutlery drawer, and it must have been, I'd say, 20 years old, a plastic straw from McDonald's that was still in the paper packaging. And when I'm at their house, I use it and I wash it again because it's so nice to have a plastic
so good,
straw.
isn't it?
Yeah.
You wash it.
I wash it. I wash it again and
reuse
reuse it. Yeah, because then it feels more eco-friendly. It's not a one-time plastic use. I've used it like 20 times. But I refuse to use a metal straw because I'm worried that I will fall over whilst drinking something and then it'll go into my head and I'll die.
I think that.
Which is not impossible. I said that to my sister. She was like, how often do you fall over with a straw in your mouth? And I was like, it only takes one time. Okay.
It takes one time. I'm the same with a glass straw. And I said that to my friend once and she said, but you're drinking out of a glass cup. And I was like, it's not the same.
Well, but
it
a
is
glass
the same, but
cup,
it's a
if you fell over with it, I don't think is going to actually impale you. I think it'll break. I think you'll end up cut. I think it'll end up on the floor somewhere away from you, maybe. The straw, though, is a weapon.
An absolute weapon.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress.
What else have you been watching, reading, getting involved with?
Let me think which one I want to mention first. So I think we've both been doing something the same.
What's that?
And I want to talk to you about it, even if it's briefly. We have both been doing somewhat of an autumn ritual. And that is, we've gone to Stars Hollow, haven't we? We've been binging Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
Is this the first time you've done this?
Yeah. So I prayed to God. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's fun to be part of a club I didn't know existed until I started watching it. I had a really shocking summer. And then afterwards, I decided I was going to hibernate a bit. And I prayed, God, what is a good TV show for me to hibernate with? And God told me Gilmore Girls, right? Now, I'm not saying that this is a divine approval of Gilmore Girls, but I'm saying for my needs in that moment, he suggested Gilmore Girls. I told my sister, she was like, is that what you pray about? I was like, yeah, amongst many other things. Yes, but it's long enough that it will see me through the whole of my hibernation.
It absolutely will.
Nothing terrible. Well, I'm not that far through. I'm on season 3, so don't do any spoilers, but nothing terrible happens. It's like, oh, she likes this boy. Oh, it's all a bit awkward. Oh, will she miss this test? You know, like I can handle that level of distress. The most distressing thing is the speed at which Lorelai Gilmore speaks, and that's fine. You know, that's fine.
Yes.
But it's after that I found out. So I was talking to a colleague of mine who's American, and she was like, oh yeah, I'm just started my fall watch of Gilmore Girls.
It is a ritual. It's absolutely a ritual. So I do this maybe every other, because it's like you say, it's long. It's something like 10 seasons long with like 20 episodes per season, an hour each episode. Like this is a commitment, not for the faint-hearted. And so I do this maybe every other autumn. I love it. Every single time, I love it.
I've literally, as soon as I realised other people were doing this and it was like a seasonal thing, I went online and obviously fell down a Reddit like rabbit hole. And people on Reddit are like exchanging ideas as to why this is such a phenomenon. And basically the theory is that even though it's seasonal, as in like it moves through the seasons of the year in the show, it follows Rory's school year. So the protagonist is Rory, who's a schoolgirl, and then her mum Lorelai, who is she's 32 and Rory's 16 and she had her very young. And
How do you feel about the fact that we are Lorelai, not Rory? Do you know what I mean by that? As in, when I started watching, I was Rory, and now I'm much, much, much closer to Lorelai's age.
I feel
How do
like
you feel about that?
Until you have children, you're not a parent or an adult.
Okay,
so until I have kids, I'm Rory. And that's it.
Okay. Until you have kids, you're in a You're in
I'm just in a perpetual state of of like being young. Great. Yeah, totally. I don't have those responsibilities. I'm Rory. I'm very happy to accept the love interests that the show scripts for her, who are outrageously good looking and all seem to have decent personalities. And I think really she should be with someone who's like not that good looking but has a great personality, and that would be truer to life. But whatever. But yeah, I'm loving it. And so because it follows the school year, it kicks off in autumn every season. And there's always like the fall stuff, like pumpkin patches and leaves, and it just feels very autumny, doesn't it?
It's beautiful. I wrote about this recently. Not that I want to plug my own article.
No, we'll put it in the show notes.
I wrote a little snippet of an article on cozy season and why we are obsessed with romanticizing autumn. Because we absolutely are. Like, people watch Gilmore Girls, it's pumpkin spice latte season, it's Nora Ephron season. And listen, I say this, I want you all to know that I partake in every single aspect of autumn ritualism, right? I'll crack out the Nora Ephron. No one needs to ask me to. Like, we properly romanticize autumn, and I find it really, I mean, we do it with every season to a degree, but there's something about autumn, and I wonder if it's because we're just making ourselves feel better because the summer's over. I wonder if it's something about this fresh start. Like you say,
it's a second chance at a first start.
Exactly.
Start.
It's like it feels more like a new year in some ways than actual New Year does.
I go big in January with like, this year's going to be great. And then when summer's over and I realise this year's actually not that great, I'm like, this academic year is going to be great. And then I start again from the beginning of September.
We're going again.
And that's it. I'm like, it's great that the year starts actually in September. Whoops, silly me thinking it was January. It's this year. This one's the one. You know?
that was all last year. In fact, that was just a rehearsal for this year. Yeah, it's so interesting. And I just think, and this is what I wrote, is I was like, I think it's a way, and we spoke about main character syndrome, but I genuinely think it's a way that we tell ourselves that our lives mean something. Because like, we're not just watching Gilmore Girls, we're doing an autumn ritual. I'm not just ordering a coffee, it's spiced pumpkin latte. Like, it's about something bigger than me. It's about like, something that's happening in the world.
Embrace the idea that we're finding meaning and importance in autumn rituals. I feel like that's too existential crisis adjacent for my current state. But yeah, I do think there's something that adds, it turns mundane things into a healthy, comforting pattern.
Absolutely. And there is nothing wrong with it. Like, let's keep romanticizing our way through this season. I am all for it. And if it means I can watch You've Got Mail every other day until Christmas.
You've Got Mail. I never liked that. I think after Meg Ryan, after her weird interview with Parky, I just can't get over her.
I haven't seen that. This is exactly one of those things. You listeners can watch that. I shan't be, because if that ruins You've Got Mail for me, I'll never forgive you.
She was just really weird and rude to Parkinson years ago. I should have dropped it by now on a show. And I don't know why. I haven't really looked into it enough, but it just really put me off her. So I never got You Got Mail. Sleeps in Seattle. That was her as well, wasn't it?
Sleeps in Seattle, When Harry Met Sally.
She really had a moment, didn't she?
Yeah, she really had a pal in Nora Ephron. That was a lucrative friendship, is what that was.
Yeah, fair enough. But speaking of rom-coms, I have watched, actually at the recommendation or the suggestion of Chris, the producer, Nobody Wants This.
Right. I haven't watched it, but you are maybe now like the 21st person who's told me that I should.
As I speak, I'm pretty sure it's like second most viewed series on Netflix or something. It was first for a while, but it's been interchanging with that Murder One Monsters for a while. So the deal is, he is effectively Seth Cohen from The OC, same character. I'd say same character as the one he plays in Gilmore Girls as well. The lovable...
Dave Rogowski.
Like, you cannot do anything to push him away. It doesn't matter how crazy you are or how high maintenance you are, because he's just a good guy. He's patient. He loves you. He's not going anywhere, right? Same character, copy and paste across all three of these shows. This time he's a rabbi as well, and he really takes his commitment to Judaism seriously. But then he meets this woman who is fun and exciting, and he's just broken off an engagement, and it's like she kind of catches his eye at a dinner party, and she's like a bit larger than life and loud and a tiny bit crass and obviously absolutely drop dead gorgeous, and she is a sex podcaster, so total polar opposites.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. And how does this work? How does this work with his faith? How does this work with her lifestyle?
Okay.
So few things that I know, we've got a Christian audience, they'll be asking themselves, do they sleep together? Yes, they do, pre-marriage. Is that okay in terms of Judaism? I Googled it. I can't say for sure. And the internet will tell you all kinds of wild things. I get the impression that there's a liberal faction of Judaism which would say that that's okay. But then there's definitely a traditional side that would say no. If we're talking about a sort of committed rabbi in a temple, then they would not do that. So I don't really know. And because that's not any of our specialist areas, I'll leave you guys to do your own research. So they do sleep together. He is just an absolutely incredible model of a man. First thing I did was Google who wrote this, because it could not be written by a man, because a man could not write a character that is so attractive to women. And it was written by a woman called Erin Foster, who is herself married to a Jewish man and converted herself. Her and her sister are, because she's a sex podcaster in the show. The character is a sex podcaster with her sister. In real life, Erin Foster and her sister are creative heads for Bumble. So it's definitely taken from
autobiographical.
Yeah, taken from real life. But the way that she has written his character, there's no way she's not influenced by the fact that it is Adam Brody and he played Seth Cohen and has everyone's hearts from that. And I just feel sorry for his real life wife, who is the woman from Gossip Girl, isn't it?
Yeah, Leighton Meester.
Because he cannot be as good as fiction has built him up to be, you know? Everyone I speak to is annoyed because they're like, that's the man I want to marry and he doesn't exist. Stop writing these characters.
Yeah. Stop re-emphasizing that he exists. He does not. This is so... Okay, so I haven't seen this, but what I have seen is Fleabag. And
I knew Fleabag was going to come up.
Did you? Well, just this whole, like... You know, because Phoebe Waller-Bridge wrote Fleabag. Andrew Scott is the hot priest. He can't be with Phoebe because of the religious... chasm between them, because he's a Catholic priest, I should say, and they remain celibate. And it's just really interesting that this is a storyline that is always so popular, because I feel like we didn't root for a couple as hard as we rooted for Fleabag and Hot Priest for a long time before that came out.
I was totally appalled by them. I think from a religious, like I think there's a really beautiful scene at the end of season 2, I think it might be like episode 4 or 5, where she goes into confession and what she says is so moving and it's so real, and I just connected with the pain of it so deeply. And then he comes into her side of the confessional and then they start having it off, and I'm like, and you ruined it, you know, because I didn't find him as attractive as everyone found him, I'm afraid.
Really?
But I think that's because it's my religion. And I'm not Catholic, but I'm close enough. And it felt like, no, this doesn't sit right. This isn't how religious leaders should be portrayed.
Ah, interesting. Okay. But it's just interesting, isn't it, that this is a storyline, that religion is something that is like the third person in a rom-com.
Here's my question. Is it a storyline, or is it a storyline that it's religious man or woman can't be with non-religious person, or is it just star-crossed lovers cannot, and we need to put something in between them, whether it is their family, whether it is their socioeconomic group, whether it is their race, whether it is their religion, because it is a time-honoured story. Is this just an offshoot of that, or are we obsessed with the idea of tainting, seducing, corrupting spiritual people? Which is it?
I think probably a bit of both. I think mainly the first one. I think surely there's a sprinkling. I think particularly, again, I haven't seen Nobody Wants This, but in Fleabag, there's definitely a sprinkling of, can we put mischief in this particular context?
Oh, yeah.
I reckon.
Yeah.
So maybe a bit of both.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. And of course, what's very interesting for us as Christian women and as many of our listeners is like, this is an actual reality. Do you know what I mean? I remember Like, this is an actual thing that we grapple with, not in any kind of cliche way, like in Fleabag or Nobody Wants This, but just for so many people, this is actually something that is quite a lived out thing, whether or not to date someone who is of the same religion as you, and the complications that will come if you decide to do so, and the sadness that might come if that's the one thing that's stopping you from doing so. It's just so many people's stories, but in such a more mundane, not at all rom-com-esque way. Yeah.
I mean, I've got friends who did the old flirt convert or had the old flirt convert done on them. I've got a friend who's married with 2 children and is so devoted to her faith. But when she met her husband and they started dating, she wasn't Christian, he was. And then she said, okay, I'll hear about this if this is important to you. And then found meaning in it and absolutely loved it. It's an interesting one. And it's one of those ones, right, where anytime I go and speak in a church about being single or dating, the question comes up. Church leaders differ wildly on it. So, for example, Miranda Hart, who wrote the first iteration of the dating course from HTB, which is often licensed out and used by other churches.
I think I love Miranda Hart. Is he also the Mind and Soul guy?
Yeah. Oh, you can't not. He is just exceptionally insightful. If you get get the opportunity to have a coffee with him, take it every time. He's very kind, very compassionate, and his knowledge and wisdom is built on lived experience, and that is anyway that's him. But he is so straight up and says, look, if we say that women can't date outside of the church, we're asking for about 50% of the women to stay single. You know, we need to acknowledge that that is the case, and that is incredibly difficult, and that requires more pastoral work and stuff, and getting people to the point where they go, yeah, Jesus is enough and I actually don't need a partner, is something that we'd all like in theory to say is the place we're at. But the reality is, if God told me, okay, you're not going to get married, I'd find that incredibly difficult. Like, I want to sit here and say God is enough, and I know that to be true in my head, but in my heart there would be a grieving process around that. So I think when people ask the question, my answer is, can you find a non-Christian who wants to date you? Because we go on about this, right? We go on about it like, oh, you know, should we not? Lots of them don't want to date us because you shouldn't be compromising your boundaries, your physical, emotional, spiritual boundaries. Are they willing to go at your pace? Are they serious about marriage and the way that you are and the way that the Bible says that we should be? Are they going to be happy to tithe 10% of their income to a church that they don't believe in, to an institution they maybe don't like very much? Are they going to be happy for you to raise their children, their pride and joy in an organization like that they may have their own feelings towards? You know, are they going to boost you and pick you up and push you towards your faith? Or are they going to pull away? Are they going to suggest that you just stay in bed on a Sunday? You know, like, if you can find that person who brings you closer to God and makes all of those concessions and is willing to understand why it's so important to you and learn about it, not necessarily with a view to converting, but just to knowing you better, then my feeling is give it a go. But I can't speak for everyone, and that has to be done really prayerfully, really carefully, and with wise counsel. And there are lots of church leaders who utterly disagree with me and would say don't. But I would say, look, you can be unevenly yoked, because that's the verse that we go back to. You can be unevenly yoked in a Christian relationship.
This is what I was going to say, because I think this would be my controversial opinion, and I know this from experience. You can be with a Christian person that pulls you away from your Christian faith. And that could be on paper, no, not on paper, but that could in reality be more damaging, more detrimental to your faith. But just because they hold the title Christian, nobody cares. Nobody's gonna challenge you on it. Nobody's gonna question it. And you don't necessarily see it at first either.
Yeah.
Because you're like, no, but this is the golden rule. He's a Christian, I'm a Christian. This is the golden rule I was taught. And therefore, any kind of distance that is between me and God can't be because of the relationship, because I've followed the golden rule.
Yeah, I agree.
It is interesting. A tricky one. But back to Nobody Wants This. Are you recommending? Are you enjoying?
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's fine. I think there are some things I'm going to come on here and be like, do not sleep on this one. And there are some things I'm going to be like, I don't think that you'll be sad you watched it. And I'd say it's like a 6 for me. A 6.5,
It's
maybe.
a 6.
It's good fun.
Okay.
It's entertaining. It's fine. You know?
Yeah.
You won't be like, oh, what a waste of time having it on in the
Yeah.
background. It's pretty easy watching.
Okay, so far you've offered Boris, which is a 3, and Nobody Wants This, which is a 6.5. I'm offering Miranda, which is an 8, and Gilmore Girls, which is an 8. Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
we're giving some good offerings here, guys.
All right. Let's do one more before we wrap up for this week. What else is on your list?
What else is on my list? Okay. We can have a little go at this one, although it might be a slightly big topic. But maybe what we'll do is we'll tease this, and then we'll say that we'll come back to it at length next time. But there are 2 men that are on my radar at the moment, and I'm going to tackle one, and we'll leave one.
Wow.
I know. I'm going to tackle one now because it's a little bit less high stakes, and we'll do the next one next episode. Oh, Philip Schofield. I watched Philip Schofield's Castaway.
What is that?
I did. Right. Okay. Philip Schofield.
Sorry, I know.
National treasure.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. No. Give us the context.
For anyone who's been under a blissful rock. Host of This Morning, national treasure. Now, I'm only old enough to know him on This Morning, but I think he has a whole past life before that. Mm-hmm. And let's say the beginning of this year, some things came out. He was having a relationship with a younger man who was involved in This Morning. Some people thought it was incredibly inappropriate. Others, including him, thought it was unwise, but there we are.
Unwise but not illegal. That was the phrase that was bandied around. It was unwise but not illegal. I heard that a lot. Illegal.
Exactly. But nevertheless, he was cancelled and hasn't really been seen or heard from since, until Channel 5 have popped him on his own island. They've cast him away.
Wait, he's on his own?
And he's on his own, on an island, him and his camera, for 10 days. Oh. And that's the whole show.
Oh.
That's the whole show.
So you got a football.
And it's him... Exactly. Sullied the Tom Hanks legacy with this. But yeah, and that's it. And basically I watched all 3 episodes, and I hated it.
Did he have any profound revelation, any moments of insight?
No.
Oh.
And listen, I don't massively know what went on, because I also feel bad for hating it, because as Christians, redemption is literally written through the rock of our belief system. It's everything we believe. But there was something about this show that felt so icky. And I think it was just that. It was him on an island with a camera to get angry at the people who have wronged him, to kind of pity himself a little bit, and to basically say, what has been done to me is not okay.
If I was interviewing you about this as a tabloid journalist, I'd want to know if he ever mentions Holly Willoughby.
Right, so inadvertently, lots, but never explicitly. So you know the very infamous, the first time she was seen on TV since it happened, she asked the nation, are you okay? Do you remember that? Well, he basically opens it by asking his family, who are around the dinner table, are you okay? And they all kind of giggle back at him. So straight from the off, you're like, right, Holly's an enemy.
Okay.
Holly's the baddie.
Okay. I think that, gosh, redemption is super important. Without, definitely redemption is available. But does that mean restoration of your platform, or does it mean that he is forgiven and loved and has that grace, but maybe the consequences of poor actions are that you're not restored to your previous job? And that's how I feel about church leadership as well. I think, and I'm still working this out. This is still very much a live topic when it comes to church leadership for me. Yes, there's redemption. Yes, there's forgiveness. Yes, there's grace. Yes, there is mercy. And God shows that to us, and we should absolutely show that to them. Does that mean that they're handed a microphone and a stage again? Or does that mean that they have incredible talents and skills that can be used in a non-influential, non-public way going forwards? I think the latter. I just do. Yeah. I don't think it's cruel. I don't think it's cancelling to say this job is just not for you now. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You will serve the kingdom in other ways, and we want you to do that.
Absolutely.
And we will support you while you find that way. So I guess with this, yeah, he made a mistake. I can't remember the extent to which he apologised or if he's still holding to the unwise, not illegal kind of thing.
I think that's still, I mean, that was certainly his line. He actually said, sure, it was unwise. That's still his line. And this is the thing.
He knew this kid, but he knew this kid when he was a kid. He knew this kid from teenage years. Yeah. So yes, the man was an adult when the relations occurred, but it does seem to me that he was in a position of authority, a position of power over him as one of the most senior people in that job, having got the job it sounds like grooming, doesn't it? I got you a good job at a TV show, and now you don't know the sort of interactions of it, but the fact that there was sort of intimacy between them is just totally unacceptable. And I just don't think he should have a platform.
No, and I think what's making me feel so icky about this in particular is it's someone seeking redemption without repentance. So it's seeking the platform being reestablished. It's seeking grace and mercy and pity, and it's seeking us feeling sorry for him, but it is in no way him being sorry.
I feel like we've come full circle from Boris Johnson.
Oh, by Jove, we have. Here we are. The lack of sorry. Sorry seems to be, as ever, the hardest word.
But look, I have no problem with issuing forgiveness and mercy and grace to people who don't deserve it or don't ask for it or don't see their need for it. But I agree, there's something, I think icky is the right word. I'm trying to find one that feels more, highbrow. I don't have one. There's something that sits uncomfortably about it for sure. Yeah.
100%. And this is where next time we might get into someone that is even more complex in this regard, because Lauren, I am dying to pick your brain about Russell Brand, but alas, we have no time today.
I've got so much to say, but Russell Brand retweeted me once. Yeah.
Right. Save the story, because people, you will hear that next time.
All right, well, so something pretty heavy to dive into next week. But for now, that's us. So we will see you guys next Wednesday.
Woo-hoo.